al-Shabaab fighters have killed at least 18 civilians and destroyed trucks laden with food aid in an overnight attack in Somalia's central region. Residents say the armed group launched the attack in the Hiran area in the semi-autonomous state of Irishabel as the trucks were transporting food supplies to Mahas town. The Al-Qaeda-linked group has battled Somalia's central government for more than a decade, and it wants to establish its own rule based on the strict interpretation of Islamic law. Footage released by the Defense Ministry in Moscow shows that Russian and Chinese military have conducted another round of joint exercises as part of the Vostok 2022 drills planned in the country's far east. Naval vessels from the Russian Pacific Fleet and the Chinese Navy carried out firing at surface targets as part of the Strategic Command and Staff exercise, as crews of Tu-95 strategic bombers performed flights and units of Russia's army completed attacks for the defense of the Kuril Islands. The result of the runoff election for the leadership of the United Kingdom's Conservative Party will be announced on Monday, with British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss favoured to defeat former Chancellor Rishi Sunak in the race to replace Boris Johnson as party leader and Prime Minister. Since Johnson was ousted as party leader by Conservative members of Parliament earlier this year, following a series of scandals, Truss and Sunak have been touring the nation to make their respective cases to be the next Prime Minister. Sri Lanka's officials say ousted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has been provided with an official residence and security by the government after he returned to the country he had fled in July during economic unrest. The former president fled in the early hours of July 13 after massive protests engulfed Colombo and demonstrators enraged with economic devastation stormed his official residence and office. He resigned after arriving in Singapore and later traveled to Thailand. The former president met with a group of ruling party members and lawmakers at the airport after he returned to the country early on Saturday, before being taken to the residence allocated by the government. The U.S. ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan, has joined other leaders in a memorial event held in honor of the former Soviet Union leader, Mikhail Gorbachev. President Vladimir Putin had briefly paid his respects to Gorbachev on Thursday at the hospital where he died, but stayed away from Saturday's memorial event. Gorbachev was not granted a full state funeral unlike his nemesis Boris Yeltsin, but was later buried in Moscow alongside his wife Raisa, who died 23 years ago. And finally, on Global Tidbits, for the second time in 5 days, NASA has halted the countdown in progress and postponed a planned attempt to launch the debut test flight of its giant next-generation rocket, the Artemis-1 moon program. The latest attempt to launch the Space Launch System rocket and its Orion capsule was scrapped after repeated attempts by technicians to correct a leak of supercooled liquid nitrogen propellant being pumped into the vehicle's core stage fuel tanks. There was no immediate word on a time frame for retrying to launch the mission, but NASA could schedule another attempt for Monday or Tuesday. And that's it on Global Tidbits.